So it was 2001, and I was on my study break. I was studying economics and sociology, and I'd finished my third year, waiting to do my fourth. In Kenya, we do 4 years as a bachelor's degree. So my uncle called me one day, and he was like, well, there's a group of campers from abroad who are around. Would you like to join them? Of course, I said yes. I like to explore, travel, meet people. And they were traveling to Western Kenya. So I joined the group, and we traveled in a big overland truck. We got to Western Kenya. We camped. The next day in the morning, I see my new friends with boxes on their head walking towards somewhere. So I joined them, and we end up in a rural school. This school, if you've been to rural schools in Kenya, didn't have good buildings, but there were lots and lots of children, hundreds, maybe even 1,000, waiting. They had pink uniform, shirts, and blue trousers. And we walked in, and Kevin, who was the leader of the group, took oranges from one of the boxes and started to juggle them. And after he finished, the kids started clapping, and he was like, fun? And they're like, yeah. And then he took a ball and kicked it. And he was like, Newton's first law of motion. I'm sure most of you in the audience know what the first law of motion is. An object in motion stays in motion unless an external force is applied to it. And then he continued with his group doing other experiments with oranges and balls, and we all had fun. At some point, I found myself answering to some of the questions he'll ask the kids. And I was standing next to a teacher who kept looking at me like I was a bit psycho, because they were not my questions, but I was in that space. So moving forward, we went back to Nairobi, and the group went back to where they were from. I graduated and got a job almost immediately, and I enjoyed my job, until one day I got an email from Kevin. And this time he was inviting me to join the group, to travel from Nairobi to Cape Town in this big overland truck, and to teach, to kick the ball like he had done. So I was very excited, and I accepted. And then I had to ask my boss, who said it was fine. So I did that for several years. I take a month off work and go and travel, and this was voluntary work. So as I did that, I started hating my job. So one day, after a lot of thought, I gathered courage and decided to resign. So I resigned, no more money. I had to tell my parents. They thought I was a bit crazy, because I had a good plan, work, get a salary, take some time off, but now I've resigned. And I decided to volunteer and do astronomy. I'd meet kids anyway and just teach them, sometimes going to a school. So with my volunteer work, once I was invited to France to present in front of scientists, mostly astronomers, professors, and they're looking for people to engage the public. And so I joined, and I was invited, and I joined, and I gave my presentation. They were impressed. I mean, I didn't have a science presentation. I was just showing my pictures with kids. But they're really impressed. And one of the leaders of the group, Carl, who's a professor in the US, invited me to run his programs here without funding. And he promised to get funding. So I continued my volunteer work. Eventually, there was funding, and things started looking really nice. So I got funding. A local company, for some reason, decided to buy me a telescope. Small telescope to show the kids. And I eventually bought a car because I had money. And now I could show my parents. My passion is actually giving me money, so I can move out now. So it was cool. It was good times. And I had a boyfriend. So my life at that time was at the peak of my life. Everything was good. And then I get an email from Carl again. We'd like to invite you to University of California in Berkeley. If you guys know Berkeley, it's like the prestigious university. And to work with these professors to develop a program for more public engagement. I was very excited. I mean, I'd never been to California. I'd heard of these songs, and I'd seen the place, the glitz and glamour. I was very excited. So I did go to California, kept in touch with my family and friends. And as any other funding body, we started running out of funding. So part of my visit was to try and fundraise, which is very difficult. I thought I was going to the land of money. So one day, Carl tells me, let's run. He's older. He's in his 60s. At that time, he was in his 60s. And I'm like, why is he asking me to run? Probably because I'm Kenyan. Kenyans are known to be runners, right? So I ran with him, and he's beaten me. He's this old man, and I'm really struggling. And when I got back, I called my best friend. She's in Kenya, so we Skyped, and I told her, today, this is what happened. And she was like, you need to take a pregnancy test. And I'm like, what? No, can't be pregnant. I'm having the time of my life. And she was like, just take it. If you're not pregnant, you're not. What's the big deal? So I decided to take the test. I decided to buy the kit. So as I was going home, I bought the kit and I was staying with the family in the US. Luckily, they were not at home that day. So I got to the house, got to my bedroom, sat on the bed, looked at my bag, looked up, thought about the life I had, and imagined, how it would change. I opened my bag, removed the pregnancy kit, read the instructions. I put it down again on the bed, looked up, thought of my life, and imagined I wasn't pregnant, Eventually, I decided to take the test. I remember it was five or so minutes, but I think I must have waited for 30 minutes. It felt astronomically long. Eventually, I checked the results, and yes, I was pregnant. So the first thing I needed to do was tell my boyfriend, who dumped me immediately. The next was there was no more funding. So I'm in a foreign country. I don't have funding. I don't have a boyfriend. I'm single, and I'm pregnant. And right at that point, I started to think, what do I do? Do I go back to employment? Or do I remain with my passion? Remember, I don't have funding. Today, I stand in front of you and tell you, I run a company with my husband. It's called the Traveling Telescope. We've reached thousands of kids, almost 100,000 in Kenya and Tanzania. We've worked with lodges. We've set it up as a company to have a sustainable model. Yes, we do get funding, but we are sustainable. We're planning to build a science center. It's happening very soon. And we just want to share the wonders of our universe. If you look up, you might think more about looking in to our own planet and preserving it and taking care of it, just like Professor Wangari Maathai preached about. Thank you.